let's hit the start streaming button and see if that does anything for us. And we have a stream, so welcome to the Thunderfoot stream on the 10th flight of Starship, which, how does the definition of insanity go? It's doing the same thing again and again and again and expecting different outcomes. And we're now on to the 10th flight of Starship, which has the same goals as the first flight of Starship. Actually, first of all, before we get into any of that, I just want to check that the stream is working and there are people here. I don't see any people. Always scary when there are no people. Yeah, it says I have a stream, but it also tells me no one is here. I might just be talking to myself. That would be... Oh, right. Privacy. It's because the stream is marked as private. Okay, let's stop. And that, we hit a start streaming button, and we should be live, which means that welcome to the Thunderfoot stream of the 10th flight of Starship. You know, there's this saying that the definition of insanity is trying the same thing again and again and again and expecting different results. And yes, the next text, first, is indeed first. Welcome, guys. We are here again. And part of me, for reasons that you wouldn't entirely expect, wants this to be over quickly, because I have a dentist appointment in not long. What's this one? Angry Black, Thunderfoot, and Common Sense Skeptic for Truth. Damn straight. So, yeah, we're back, and hopefully it's not going to get scrubbed this time. Let's just see them. They say their stream's not going to start for another 8 minutes. So, yeah, I, in the meantime, will show you how I've been torturing some Starship bricks. So let's go to Vegas. There we go. Now I can show you, it might be a bit loud, but this was me earlier. I decided to test the structural integrity of the Starship tiles.
Onto the table. So it's basically just testing the thing for, oops. So this is just testing the thing for shock, okay?
So that's my fragment of Starship heat tile.
Yeah. Very good.
Oh dear.
Not so much. So that's that was cracked already, it must be said. Although it now does give you...
Yeah, so for the past week or so, I've been cooking these things.
Yeah, so the steam has basically bled through.
I've been cooking them and freezing them, and I've got to be, if you're being honest, and putting them in water, and they absorb a crap ton of water, and then you freeze them, and I was surprised at how well they actually stood up to that. And then, of course, once you have a giant block of ice and you put it into a blowtorch, you get lots of steam that comes off these things. See if you can get the mouse there. Yeah, so if you take a look on the top here, you'll see there's loads of steam. So I'm not so entirely certain. Yeah, these tiles are very robust, to the point where they're basically exactly the same tiles that the shuttle had. And the shuttle, in its entire life, they created 5 heat shields and it's something like only ever 5% of the tiles ever needed to be replaced. And when they replaced those tiles, admittedly, they were fairly expensive. They were like $5,000 a piece or something, which most of that was the fact that there wasn't a big market for these things. If you've only got 5 heat shields in the entire world and you're only ever going to replace 5% of the tiles over 20 years or something, then yeah, there's not a big market for these things, so they're going to be expensive. But I was asking Musk's AI, how much these tiles probably cost, and it was estimating between $100 and $500 a pop, which means that the price that I've been paying for these things on eBay is, I spent probably the best part of $1,000 on Starship heat tile fragments, which, yeah, that's kind of crazy, but thanks to all those people who support the channel through Patreon, I have, the discretion to do this sort of thing. But yeah, so I have been putting them through their paces. Overwhelmingly, their biggest drawback is they are incredibly thin. So the typical Starship heat tile has the faces that are about 1 centimeter thick. Whereas the Starship heat tiles were, Starship is that thick, Space Shuttle was that thick. And I think a lot of that was the shuttle carried people, and they were really quite keen that, they didn't kill the people. Whereas Starship, it's a much more cavalier design, whereas it's not got people on it, so if you melt a few holes in it, it's not actually that big of a deal. Well, in terms of actually getting back to the ground. When it comes to can you put this back into orbit quickly, that's going to be a whole different kettle of fish. So if you take a look at what they've done with the heat shield this time, imagine this is, can I see me? I need to see me so I can show what I'm doing is, it's making me big. There we go. So if this is the belly of Starship and it's coming down through the atmosphere, the bit in the middle actually gets most of the heating. So if you take a look at what they've done with the one they're about to launch, they've taken like several tiles off down the length of it, and in a few places they've taken 2 tiles off. So it's pretty clear that all they're really after is how badly will this get messed up if we melt a few holes in it. And yeah, how well you can just sort of patch this thing up, I don't know. But rapid reuse doesn't seem like it's going to be on the cards. And indeed, the heat tiles. I was going into the core of the heat tiles, and it looks like the core of them is actually waterproof. So, if you take a look at my most recent video, I go through this thing where you put water on them and it just sucks up the water like crazy. So the waterproofing on these tiles is basically just a monolayer of hydrophobic groups, and those will burn off at about 1,000 degrees. So they will burn off during re-entry. But in the bigger chunks of the silica material, but let me see if I can pull this up for you. I need to go back to now. Boom a moment. So it was later on. It was after I'd smashed up the tile, and I'm going actually into the core of the tile, and what you find is in the core of the tile, whilst on the sides of the tile, it sucks water up like crazy. In the middle of the tile,
it is generally waterproofed where the pins are. Not entirely.
So it looks like there is the thing is that if you're going to spend a few $100s on a tile, the waterproofing it costs you basically nothing. Your real problem is that it burns off during re-entry, and then your tile is completely non-waterproof. And that was a problem with the shuttle. It took about 2-3 days to actually go through and re-waterproof all the tiles. Starship is basically exactly the same thing. Anyway, according to I've not been paying any attention to the chat in the meantime, so I come in and immediately CFF. Here we go again. Yeah, so let's see if it's been scrubbed yet. Part of me, my heart will dance a happy little jig if it has, because, yeah, dentist appointment in not very many hours. Okay, let's see if we actually have. Oh my god, it's already slipped. It slipped another 15 minutes. God, I hate you. So, the 10th attempt to reach not orbit. And the reason they're probably not trying to put these things into orbit is the second you do, the only way you can get out of not orbit is to actually fire your engines again. And if that goes wrong, or if that fails for any reason, you now have 100 tons of Starship in basically you've lost control of the ship in space, and that's eventually going to come down and land at some random point on Earth with roughly, it'll dump the equivalent energy of about a kiloton of TNT when it does. Now, overwhelmingly, the Earth is covered 2/3 with water, so the chances are it's just going to land in the sea. But yeah, if it lands on land, overwhelmingly, the land is not inhabited. It's like frozen tundra or deserts or glacial wastelands. But let's just say you have these things land in a populated area, like, say, for instance, London or Paris or Munich or Tokyo or something. It's deemed fairly poor form to rain down, kilotons worth of energy randomly on Earth. That's the sort of thing where the optics on that aren't great. And whilst, the overwhelming chances are that it's just going to come down somewhere. The nearest instance I can think of actually was deorbiting Skylab, and they kind of screwed it up, and in the end it sort of rained down debris over Australia. Yeah, no, you didn't miss anything yet, other than they've delayed it by 15 minutes. So, Tim's going to the moon! Yes, probably not. Oh my god, when could be the earliest time that only if he converts to the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, then he might have a chance of going to the moon. But otherwise, yeah, Tim's not going to the moon. So, we're back again, and assuming that they don't scrub the launch again, I will be... Where is my... Yeah, let's scrub that. No, that's me. I need... There we go. I can go back to my charts. I want to plot all of these things up as So you have all of these things in real time. And also, let's see if we can actually pull up the actual Excel. The booster. That's the one I'm going to fill in. So that's the future you're looking at there. That big blank thing. That's going to be the energy of the booster in tons of TNT. And it says 0 to 1 at the moment because there's no data in there. But I went through and took a look at the flight data from, I think it was the last thing that was quasi-successful, which I think was Flight 6. And with Flight 6, you could plot up the kinetic energy in red, the potential energy in green, and the total energy in yellow. And where all this is going is the bit that everyone's soy faces over about. Oh, they caught the booster with the chopsticks. And it's like, yeah, by that time, it's a 100-ton empty grain silo. And the forces involved in the booster landing, well, you can do it basically by the thrust at take. Basically, the thrust is equal to the weight at takeoff, ish. And the takeoff weight of Starship is about 4,000 tons, something like that. About the weight of a destroyer. And when it's landing, it's about 100 tons. So it's 1/40th, like, what's that? 2.5%, that sort of thing. It really is an empty husk by the time it lands. So even if the bit that will be most dramatic is if it blows up on the launch pad. That will be truly spectacular. Like No Survivors, truly spectacular. In that it will be a absolutely colossal. Well, all of the energy of the rocket is basically released in less than a second, and it's the weight of the rocket is basically the energy of the TNT, roughly, so 4 kilotons. Hiroshima was 20-ish. So that would be spectacular. But by the time it's coming in and it's landing, being caught by the chopsticks, so to speak, there's virtually nothing left in terms of energy in the thing. Even if it blows up at that point, it's maybe got like 10 tons of TNT. It's a 10-ton of TNT equivalent, which by, war standards, that's a blockbuster type of bomb. Moab, mother of all bombs, they're only like, are they 30 tons? Whatever. They're on that sort of league. So it would be a big explosion, but it's still chump change compared to the energy of the rocket when it takes off. And you see it directly. I mean, you just compare the size of the flame that comes out of the bottom of Starship when it's taking off compared to when it's landing again, and it's basically nothing. So with the shuttle, you could probably, if you put an undercarriage on this thing, glide in the booster, and that it's a very large, very empty tube. And so, you might need some control surfaces, but even by the time what you get out of this chart here is by the time you're doing your burn, which is all the way over here, you've lost like 90% of the energy that the booster had. You've just lost it to viscosity in the air. Anyway, right. So during all of that time, I was thinking, and I can't think and read at the same time because, they're on different windows. Right. So let's see what we're at on the Starship stream. Have they cancelled it yet? No, they're still on for starting their stream in about 5 minutes. Um, yeah. So what else did I do with the Starship heat tiles? Yeah, when you fill them up with water, I was partially expecting that when you cook them, you would get some sort of spalling. It's a common feature that you get with things like concrete. Yeah, you basically just get a blowtorch, you put it on concrete, you get water evaporates, turns to steam, you get very high pressure little pockets in there, and that sort of blows out great chunks of the stuff. And they were with the space shuttle, they were very cagey about this. You go back and read a load of the sorry, when you go back and read a load of the shuttle documents, they were very cagey about this. So that if they suspected that the shuttle was wet, they would actually face the heat shield towards the sun for like hours at a time to try and actually get some heat into the heat shield to get rid of any residual water. I think the fear was that, this might lead to some cracking of the tiles, and if you get the cracking of the tiles before re-entry, then you're going to have a bad time. Basically, Starship doesn't really care because it's a giant empty tube with no people on board. So that's not really that big of a deal. With the shuttle, it's poor form to kill your astronauts. And whilst two of the shuttles did blow up. What was it? Challenger. That was where Feynman did his great sort of little experiment where, they said that the O-rings were fine, even down to 0 degrees, and he basically twisted the O-rings, clamped them up, stuck them in iced water, and then took them out, took the clamp off, and they were basically frozen in that shape, which that was basically what blew up Challenger. That was 1980 something. Um, I have some super chats come in. Hey, Dr. Mason, long time fan. Thank you, hold my beer. Any future busting videos outside of Musk? I've been meaning to move on from Musk for over a year. Right? There's part of me deep inside that, but he is just the absolute king. So I wanted to move on, and then he goes all in on Trump. And then he goes all in with his Department of Government Efficiency, which was a colossal failure. And then he had the spat and the falling out. And during all of this time, Tesla it's struggling. Sales down in China, sales down in Europe, sales are down in America. There's no potential for the company to turn itself around. So Tesla did very well all the time. It was essentially acting as a monopoly when it had no competition. Now it's got competition coming out the wazoo. And then there's SpaceX, which is today I want to more or less just cover the energies of the various portions of the Starship flights. So the bizarre thing is, I don't want it to blow up like the last 3 did. Yeah, every time they've actually tried to put a payload on this thing more than a banana, it's blown up. And yeah, Hyperloop, Boring Company, Roadster 2, XJet, you are entirely right. It's just a non-stop stream of bullshit. But after that, I want to get and bust some some of the more big persistent things, like thorium reactors. I want to go and they are just massively overhyped. It's like a uranium reactor just more difficult to make, and all the same exact fundamental problems of a uranium reactor. So you see all sorts of grotesquely ignorant things like you're able to run these things on the moon. And no, uh, all nuclear reactors are basically glorified water boilers. Let me refine that slightly. All the big power ones on Earth are basically glorified water boilers because when you boil water, you can generate a lot of high pressure gas, which you can use to run turbines. Um, when you're on the moon, your main problem is you wouldn't be able to condense the water back again. It's getting rid of your excess heat. Getting rid of the excess heat on Earth, not so bad because you have rivers. Nuclear reactors are quite often near rivers. Great for recondensing your water back from being steam to being water again. Um, so, yeah, I want to do thorium reactors. I want to do essentially a series on the big busts, things that people think will be revolutionary technologies but won't be. So there's the flying cars, the eVTOL stuff. I've done stuff on it before. Again, Musk has been claiming when in the Iron Man movie he claims he's going to make an electric vertical takeoff and landing jet. It, it's depressing. I'm sorry. In fact, people asked me yesterday, um, "Oh, the moon reactor. What the hell do they want a nuclear reactor on the moon for?" Okay, let me just take one little sip more, and I will address the problems of nuclear reactors on the moon. So the first nuclear reactor on the moon, I think, was Apollo 11. It might have been Apollo 12, I forget which. It was one of the very early Apollo missions, and it had a radioisotope generator. Now, there are various ways you can get energy out of nuclear reactors, nuclear reactions. The one that they have in the big power reactors is you get an unstable nucleus, neutron comes in, nucleus becomes unstable, split, releases a pants load of energy, and then you use that to boil water, run turbines, blah, blah, blah. However, some nuclei are naturally unstable, and so they will release a little particle and a significant amount of energy. And these are the radioisotopes. That's radiation. That's essentially fallout in all the nuclear war movies. So imagine you get something that's really nasty fallout and you stick it all together in a block, and all that radiation just makes it really hot, heats it up to like 200-300 degrees Celsius, that sort of thing. And so you have something that's constantly hot, and so on the other side you have a heat sink and a lot of radiator fins that basically dissipates that heat. So you have a thermal gradient across these things, and there are these things called Peltier effect devices. And if you put a thermal gradient over them, they generate electricity. Now, the great thing about Peltier effect devices is they have no moving parts. They are basically guaranteed to work. They are the most robust power source you can get. Just a slight downside that, you need a big chunk of super radioactive stuff to make it work. And that's what they had on one of the early Apollo missions. And you basically need a power source. When the lunar module was powered almost exclusively by batteries. So once the batteries went flat, that was basically curtains for the lunar module. Also, fairly interesting the way that all panned out with Apollo 13. That, they had to save the batteries. The Oh, the stream is live. Thank you, Will, for the heads up. Good. Right. Launch this thing. Either blow it up or. And the nice thing is, it will only last an hour, right? Okay. Hit me up with the watchy and
back to a little bit of Starship 101.
Okay. Oh my God, they've not. Oh, oh, they have Fatso in there. Okay, come on, show me Fatso. Oh my word. You need to run your fat ass around the block a few times. He's there with his Nuke Mars t-shirt. One of the most profoundly scientifically ignorant statements you could. Basically, Mars is a problem. It's too small. You see, all gas molecules are basically little bouncy balls. And when they all bounce around together, some of them for that moment moving faster and some of them are moving slower, this thing called a Boltzmann curve. And if the fast moving molecules have escape velocity, you lose your atmosphere. And this is Mars's primary problem, as it's too small, and things that when you get solar radiation and that sort of thing, it's enough to basically knock the atmosphere off the planet, which is why Mars basically has no atmosphere, and the atmosphere that's left is heavy molecules like carbon dioxide. So we have a similar thing here on Earth that, I think hydrogen gets escape velocity, helium-3 gets escape velocity, helium-4 doesn't. And all the heavy stuff, oxygen, nitrogen, doesn't have escape velocity. So the bottom line is that Mars doesn't get the solar radiation. It has quite a lot of ice on there, but if you heat it up to room temperature, the vapor pressure of water is 20 millibar. That's 1/50th of an atmosphere. That's not going to help you. And even if you do warm it up, you're just going to increase the rate that you lose the water to space. So, yeah, and you can... Oh, well, look at that. They have all the little spikes where they're going to mount their tiles. Those tiles, by the way, this is another thing. Bugger. I didn't transfer all the infrared data over. I recorded all of these things on infrared. I have a super chat that comes in, planning to go to Mars without accounting for radiation. It's like planning to go to the Titanic without accounting for the water. Entirely true. So the first people who go to Mars will live entirely in a metal tube. It's basically going to be, you're going to land the space station on Mars. And whilst it's true, the radiation that you typically get is not that far off what you would get on the International Space Station, which is about 100 times background, which is significant. The problem is, if you get a big solar storm comes through, those numbers can sort of skip by like orders of magnitude and you basically get fried. After that, your only real hope is to get some shielding, like about 10 meters of shielding, 30 odd feet. You have to basically dig yourself a hole in the ground and live in the hole in the ground, which means that living on Mars is going to be operationally there will be no significant difference between living on Mars and living in a cave on Earth. A super chat comes in from Pebmets. In the 1950s, I can understand you'd fly and learn from failure. Nothing before as a base. This is 2025. You shouldn't need dozens of failing flights to learn what you need to know from the past, thermal protection shields, etc. Yeah. Oh my God, I have been interacting with the SpaceX fans on Twitter. They are the absolute most insufferable people. So they will make all these comments about, how Apollo cost more than modern stuff. And it's like, yeah, when you're doing things for the first time, it costs lots of money. So the Apollo guidance computer costs something like $25 billion. And, your typical smartphone idles circles around its computational power now. When you're doing things for the first time, it costs more money. And, yeah, likewise, all the Starship is basically using the exact same heat tiles that they had on the shuttle. The exact same heat tiles. Right, let's see if I can actually... There we go. Jay Shoa says, I love you, Bumpy Johnson. Please be my wife in sickness and health till death do us part. Well, depending on where the Starship lands, death might come quickly for us all. So... And can we listen to the... Can we get a and such like? Thanks, Thunder. Yep, you can definitely get an and such like. Let's see if it... someone told Thunderfoot to listen to Musk. I assure you, I've listened to Musk plenty. In fact, arguably, this is my superpower, is I go back to the Musk videos of 10 years ago and you watch them and they are pure delusion. In fact, I was sort of idling a little intro, and so it turns out Musk's first claim that Starship was going to make orbit was in 2019, and he said that, I think we have a good chance of making orbit within in fact, he might have said we'll be flying people on Starship by 2020. So it's now 6 years and 10 flights later. When do you just wake up and smell the roses that this isn't going according to plan? This is not the way that it should happen. You take a look at something like, hang on, well, 1 second. They have signs of fuel going into the rocket. Thank God. So they're fueling it, and yeah. Oh, no, I didn't want to do that. Did not want to do that. I randomly pushed the wrong button for a second there. I hope I haven't killed the stream, but I want to make this a bit smaller. Yeah. So we have all the fueling to do, and yeah. Ministry of Venom Fang X will span the globe. Entirely possible. By the end of the year, should be Musk's epitaph. Musk will be remembered forever as, the man who was going to do it next year. They had everything. The Tesla Semi was going to have full self-driving. It was going to detect if you felt sick in the cab and pull over to the side of the road and call emergency services for you. 10 years later, is it 10 years later? That was 2017, so 8 years ago. They've delivered nothing. The Roadster, almost exactly the same time. And that was also going to be a collaboration with SpaceX, where it was going to have cold gas thrusters that was going to make it be able to fly. It was going to take Tim to the moon. And oh my God. That's one of the early conferences where Starship it wasn't that it was just going to be able to go to orbit. It was going to be able to fly all the way around the moon with, just straight up launch without refueling. Yeah, how'd that work out? Don't forget the white paper, says James, and you're goddamn right. So people try to distance Musk from his failures, especially the cult of Musk. And believe me, I've interacted with those significantly today, and I don't recommend it. So they will immediately come out with all the excuses that, Musk never really had any great interest in the Hyperloop. And it's like, are you fucking shitting me? They had the SpaceX special projects team construct a Hyperloop, a rusty tube, outside SpaceX headquarters with SpaceX written in big letters down the side of the Hyperloop. Let me rephrase that. The kilometer-long rusty tube that barely held a vacuum. Yeah, and they had a couple of very underwhelming student races that had the vibe of the Red Bull. The Red Bull, what are they? The Soapbox Derby races. Oh my God, I'm looking at Musk. You know that he's going to be going on about how this is going to go to Mars, and it's the first rocket that's ever truly made it possible to go to Mars. And the reality is, any rocket makes it possible to go to Mars. So much of what Musk comes out with is true from a certain perspective. But, the reality is Starship will currently take about, well, it's difficult to say. Every time it's taken 10 tons plus, it's blown up. 10 tons is half the weight capacity of the Falcon 9. And the Falcon 9's takeoff weight, oh my God, it's not that much. 600 tons? Yeah. So it's 1/6 of the weight of Starship, and it takes half the payload. Starship weighs 6 times more and takes half the payload of the Falcon 9. I might gobble that bit, but you know what I'm saying. And some aquatic borealis. Heard of scientists concerned about oxidization? Yeah, oxidization of aluminium destroying the ozone layer. Because Musk is basically spamming Starlink satellites. It's a problem that you have if you're a launch provider. Is there really isn't a launch market, because once you put a satellite into orbit, it's there forever. So you've got a problem now. You don't really have any repeat business. And Musk looked at this and said, well, we need a way where we can launch gazillions of satellites. So the obvious one is you put up a mega constellation. But if you put up a mega constellation to a sensible orbit where it'll be there for 20 years, once you've launched that mega constellation, you're out of business again because there's nothing to launch. So they put them into a low orbit where they burn up after 5 years. Now, SpaceX has something to launch, but that's for the Falcon 9. You move on to Starship, and there is no market for a rapidly reusable 100-ton to low Earth orbit launcher. None. Which is lucky because it's basically exactly the same heat protection system as the shuttle. Not a fan of Velsi says, I'm not a fan of Musk, but I am a fan of making spaceflight cheaper. Is reusable rocket just a waste of time, or is SpaceX approach just bad? So SpaceX has actually genuinely made things cheaper, but the amount of that that's due to reusability is marginal. So overwhelmingly, what made it cheaper is it wasn't the shuttle. Uh, the shuttle has all sorts of legacy issues. Like, why, if you're launching satellites, would you also want to put half a dozen people on it? Don't get me wrong, for the right venue, the shuttle was great. But for, if you just wanted to launch stuff to orbit, the shuttle was dumb on gazillions of different levels. It did have some benefits. It had an astronomically large payload bay, which was originally a stipulation of, I think, the Air Force, who wanted to launch spy satellites, big spy satellites. And so they said, no, the shuttle must have this ginormous payload bay. And then they never used it. So it turns out, in the end, the only thing that it used its massive payload bay for was launching the International Space Station. It was the only thing that could have done it. Nothing else could have launched the International Space Station. So, fine. Yeah, it took some unexpected twists, but it got there eventually. By the way, the clock is actually ticking down at 24 minutes. Oh, this is going to be bad. So let's see, 24 minutes. It's going to launch at about 2 a.m. for me, and then it's an hour-long flight, slightly more than. That's going to be 3 a.m., and I have to be up at 8. 5 hours sleep. Oh my God. Stay strong, brother. Anyway. Yeah, so SpaceX has overwhelmingly made things cheaper by basically using off-the-shelf components and sort of spamming them. And the amount that it saves due to reusing the first stage isn't anywhere near as big as you think it is, because you still have all of the static costs. Where you still have to employ all of your people, whether you launch rockets or whether you don't launch rockets. There's a sort of static cost associated with all of these things. And yeah, reusing the rocket doesn't change those. So I think it works out as like 10% of the actual savings come from reusing the booster. It's a incremental saving over expendable launch vehicles, like things that were designed by slide rules by the Russians 50 years ago, like the Soyuz. So if you actually just do a direct cost comparison between the Soyuz and Falcon 9, there's maybe a factor of 2 difference between them, but it's not orders of magnitude better. You don't get huge cost savings by reusing this stuff. A lot of it is, what are you actually going to make money? What are you going to launch here? How are you going to make your money? Who is going to be your customers and pay for all of this? Soyuz did okay. I mean, in fact, if I remember rightly, they did stuff similar to what SpaceX does, which is you take a small, reliable engine and you spam them. And, so it's not like the Saturn V, which iconically had these 5 absolutely colossal engines that it inspired a certain degree of awe, did the Saturn V. Could China's moon landing spark a new space race? No. And for 2 reasons. The first one is it's already been going for 20 years. China's had, it's been crawling towards this goal for 20 years. It's difficult to see that this would turn into a race at the end. The second thing is the American approach is an absolute. It lacks focus. It lacks focus. It lacked focus since Apollo. And, Apollo's goal was basically beating the Russians, which was fine. Okay, great. You beat the Russians. But after that, what are they going to do now? And Werner von Braun had a gazillion ideas of things that they could do, but none of those came to fruition. And so what they wanted was a space station and a shuttle to go to the space station. And they basically had the choice. They only had the funding for one of them, and they chose the shuttle. So, someone says my audio is quiet. My audio looks good here. Okay. Yeah. No, according to this, my audio is fine. Okay. So then you scroll. Basically, America has had no focus in its space program since Apollo. None. And that's its main problem, is lack of focus. And so, comes the Obama era. And Obama is basically the reason why SpaceX exists. Obama had this crazy idea that we need something new. We're using the same rockets that we used 50 years ago. And it's like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. We're using the same internal combustion engines that we used 100 years ago. Rocket engines are some of the most efficient engines that you can get. You're not going to radically change the way that rockets function. So they wanted to get company. They did have a problem that there was an effective monopoly on space launch in America, and so they were basically stiffing Uncle Sam hard. And it's into this realm that Musk walks. And yeah, it's true that he stiffs them slightly less hard than the previous ones, but that's not exactly a hard barrier to cross. Thank you, Bump Johnson and Danny Archer, for the contributions to the stream. I'm not quite sure what that's about, but so you roll in to the Constellation Days. So America decides, yeah, let's do something sensible. Let's go back to the moon or to an asteroid or something like that. None of it really had any scientific goals whatsoever. In fact, you ask people, what scientific goals are you actually interested in? And they really don't have any. They just want people on the moon or on asteroids or on Mars or something. The reality is that you're just putting people in giant Coke cans and sending them off to slightly different gravitational wells. They will live the rest of their life in a oversized Coke can. Most likely it will be a miserable existence. If you have people there, living the rest of your life in an oversized Coke can with people is not a romantic proposition. So, if you take a look at the International Space Station, what science is actually done on that? And if you're being harsh, and I'm frequently harsh, it's pretty contrived shit, the research that gets done on the International Space Station. If you take a look at the papers that come out of it, about 50% of the papers are how to build the International Space Station, which is, I don't actually have a great issue with that. doing technologically new things, you can stimulate new ways of looking at things. But I looked it up earlier today. The most important piece of science that came out of the International Space Station was they had a dark matter observatory on it or something. But the reality is that you don't really need an International Space Station for that. You don't need people in space to do that. Now, it's entirely possible. I've worked at several of these very large scientific institutions, and a lot of them they struggle to justify their costs. But the thing is that if all of a sudden you do come across an absolute killer experiment that you need something like the International Space Station for, and you don't have one, then you can't advance the science. And a super chat comes in from Andre. Would love to see a comparison of the behavior of the cross section of Starship to the blunt surface of the shuttle on the capsules at entry. That's way above my pay grade. Way above my pay grade. I'm going to just deal with the macroscopic numbers, with the total energy of these various components. And Grumpf says, thanks for keeping all the X's in check. SpaceX, TwitterX, and Venom FangX. Yeah, damn straight. By the way, we're down to 15 minutes, and they've got their B-roll of, Starship's greatest... Oh, bugger, hit the wrong button again. Sorry. I hope that I've not screwed up the stream. Let's try and shrink the SpaceX B-roll down a bit. I do hope that is muted. It is muted. Good. Oh my god, and they have different commentary people on. Yeah. For one of my most recent videos, I went over the last 10 launches or 9 launches or whatever of Starship, and some of them are absolutely hilarious, where they're sat there for 10 minutes before they finally acknowledge that, we lost control of it and it burnt up. And they have a lot of dead air in that cast. Oh Jesus, they have the robot. You should see, actually. I recommend the Chinese have this sort of robotics Olympics thing, and whilst all there really are is humanoid robots walking on uneven surfaces, damned impressive. Oh Jesus, he's got the promo of his restaurant, which has bacon for $20 or something. Yeah. Linus Tech Tips. What was his great contribution that people who think that the Hyperloop is debunked just don't have faith in the scientific qualifications of the people at SpaceX or something? Where was I at? The complete calamity of the non-continuity of America's space program. So with Constellation, they had a plan, and then they cancelled half of the plan. So it was basically a rerun of the shuttle. When they had the shuttle, they wanted a shuttle and a space station, which made sense, and then they cancelled half of it. So they had a shuttle but no space station, which was... It lacked focus, and even if you could make it technologically succeed, which they did, and it was very impressive, and they learned a lot by doing it, but you had a shuttle and nowhere to go to. And with Constellation, they got a rocket that could take people to the moon, and they could take more people to the moon, which was great, but the capsule was heavier, so they couldn't really they could take people to the moon, but they couldn't get them to the surface, and they couldn't also get them into a circular orbit. So I'm gonna make me big again. I need to be able to draw circles with my hands. There we go. So now I am Kaiju Thunderfoot. So yeah, this is the moon. I need a moon. Do I have something circular? Must have something. There we go. A chunk of zirconium. That chunk of zirconium is the moon. And so you're coming in from the Earth, and if you don't do anything, you just hook around and go back. And what Apollo did is it burned the fuel that got you into a nice little circular orbit. And in that nice little circular orbit, that was great because that meant that, you know, if you screwed it up on one orbit, you could pick it up on the next because the next orbit was only a couple hours later. But so Apollo came into the nice little circular orbit. If you don't do anything, you just go straight back to Earth. But the constellation only had enough, and it could only have packed enough fuel to get you into this super elliptical orbit, which was not quite the low orbit and not the free return thing. And the problem with that was everything was built on the fact of this calamity of errors. So now they have this crazy orbit, which I think it takes like a week or something. So if you screw things up, the people on the surface run out of oxygen. Oh my god, and Starship is going to spaff satellites that are also going to burn up in less than an hour. Joe says, started watching the channel when I was 16 and got a telescope. That's about when I got my first decent telescope, my 8-inch Dobsonian. And now I'm 32. First time I realised this. So, cheers. Order of magnitude. Thank you, Joe. Much appreciated. There we go. Thumbs up. Thumbs up for the astronomer. Yes, I'm absolutely certain Musk wouldn't be able to find Mars in the night sky. Whereas I have actually videoed the volcanoes on Mars from my balcony. In fact, I might have even live streamed that. So yeah, the shuttle turned out to be not the shuttle, the International Space Station. A lot of pointless busy work in terms of the science that went on there. If you take a look at the plans for Artemis, when they want to land on the moon, the science is uninspiring. Why do you need a human on the surface of the moon to do this sort of thing? What are we down to? We're down to 8 minutes, and there's a lot of frost. By the way, okay. This is where it gets interesting. So once you get to the upper stage, and it gets really cool, and you get all that condensation, if you get that on the heat shield, then you're going to be packing water up into space with you. I suspect that when they make all of their heat tiles, they're all waterproofed. Because, yeah, it would cost you pennies if you're actually making the tiles you basically expose them to an atmosphere of some evil hydrophobic silane. And yeah, that's basically all you have to do. The problem is, that's exactly what they did with the shuttle, and when it comes in, it's burned off. And that means that the shuttle cracked the reusable heat shield. It really did. Yeah, when Musk says no one's ever done a reusable heat shield, he's just absolutely 100% full of shit. The shuttle had 5 orbiters, 5 heat shields, and they did 135 missions between them. And yeah, there was only one which had a problem with the heat shield, and that wasn't that the heat shield failed, it's that basically, you know, a giant chunk of foam knocked a hole in the heat shield. So yeah, problem with the design for certain. This is one of the things that Starship does have in its favor is the shuttle did have a kind of dumb design in that not much in the way of an emergency abort system. Um, Starship's never going to take people, so it's kind of a moot issue. This is, yeah, if they ever get this thing to work, it's just going to spam Starlink satellites to low Earth orbit. Yippee. Okay, yeah, that's real progress towards taking people. No, it's just going to spam a heck of a lot more Starlink satellites to low Earth orbit. And as someone said earlier, there are now serious concerns that you're dumping tons of this stuff burns up in the upper atmosphere. In fact, this is one of the things that we will come to. Let me shrink myself down again. How are we doing on time? 5 minutes. Okay. I'm gonna no, shrink me down. I want to be small again. Make me small. There we go. I'm small. And I need Excel. And I need to come up to my re-entry profiles. Yeah. Oops, no. Boomer. Yeah. So, yeah, I want to go over all of the various energies of Starship. In fact, the first thing that we'll come to is in the first 4 minutes of launch. So, what we want to do is, this is one of the nice things, by the way, is I will be able to flick between flight 6, where it looked like this, and what it looks for flight 10. So, oops. I don't know why it's flicking like that. That's okay. When I was doing this earlier, I did actually do some sort of dry rehearsals on this. It worked then. So yeah, and I have to put in velocity and altitude. Okay, so I need my data input skills here. So 70% chance no go. And no, yeah, it looks fairly full to me. I've not been paying any attention to the SpaceX stream or whatsoever. So yeah, okay, let's move our stuff around. We're going to need him down there, and I'm going to be down there as well. Excellent. So this is going to be our time into flight, and we're going to pick it up basically after separation. So the booster, it starts off at it basically free falls from space. And of course, when you're free falling from space, there's only really atmosphere for the first 20 odd kilometers. Once you're up to 10 kilometers, you've lost 3/4 of the atmosphere. That's where the planes fly. Once you get above that, yeah, I'm still in Czechia. Okay, right. What are we at? 2 minutes. I get myself a drink because Kathy says you told me you don't have the things perfectly to do good science. It takes willingness to show your work and concede when you're wrong in the face of real numbers. Damn straight. In fact, yeah, I'm working up to another video about metallic water and the sodium explosions, the conclusions of which are the early stuff was probably mostly, if not entirely wrong. I mean, yeah, there are core components of it that are correct. Yeah, which is, they're twitching their engines. The core components are when the stuff explodes in water, there's a positive feedback mechanism. Okay, anyway, right, we're down to 1 minute mark. Stuff starts to get exciting. Oh no, I've got lots of stuff on metallic hydrogen and metallic water. Size of the window. Right, okay, we're small. And, you're right. Oh, we have a seagull flying by. Seagull's about to get the mother of all headaches. It looks like it's almost entirely fueled. We are ready to go. Yeah, fingers crossed that it explodes, not for any other reason than I've got a dentist appointment in 6 hours, which is going to be 5 hours if this thing goes the distance. And, yeah. Reasons. Okay, what are we down to? 40 seconds. They have 4 kilotons of fuel on board. Right, so just so you know, I'm going to express energy on all of the charts that I'm looking at here in terms of tons of TNT. A ton of TNT has roughly 1/10 of the energy of burning gasoline. But that's per unit of gasoline. To burn a unit of gasoline, you need basically 2 mass units of oxygen. So it's more like a factor of 3 or something. Anyway, we are closing in. Oh, it's held at 40. My God, I am stuck in a 40-second. I'm stuck at 40 seconds. For God's sake. Oh, you want me to... Yeah, bigger window. Okay, fine. Now that we're not running the B-roll, we will have. There we go. Let's have me underneath the Starship, for reasons. There we go. Whee! I'm about to get fried. It's Texas. Yeah, it's Texas. Texas Fried Thunderfoot. TFT. Texas Fried Thunderfoot. Yeah, TFT. Oh my God, it's still at 40 seconds. Still at 40 seconds. This is, time is going really, really slowly. It's like being on drugs, but, not in a good way. My God, this is going to be the complete, Starship moment. 10 attempts to make not orbit, and 9 attempts not to make orbit, and now we're on the 10th attempt to not make orbit, and yeah, we're held at 40 seconds and 40 seconds and 40 seconds. Someone hit Control Alt Delete at SpaceX. Yeah, the thing's full of blood. The thing's full of fuel at the moment. They had Fatso Musk, or very wet dress rehearsal. Okay. So I know what's happening. They're waiting for Musk to shoot a few holes in it so they can claim it was sabotage, maybe. Yeah. That by the way, what's sat on the pad there at the moment is roughly 1/4 of a Hiroshima bomb. Yeah. This is another reason why they're never going to put people on it. Oh, it's got up to 41 seconds. Time is running backwards. But very, very slowly. It's like maybe we went into a black hole. Yeah, hold my ketamine. It's the time's vanished completely now. It's difficult to believe they're going to detank this thing. Yeah, oh my god, they had some great, the 4-inch flight. Please, dear God, let it be another rerun of the 4-inch flight. So, whilst we are at peak anticipation, um, oh, they're going to scrub it? Nah. No, come on, for fuck's sake. They'll at least go for the 4-inch flight. The 4-inch flight was one of the most hilarious things ever. I recommend that you go and watch it. So early on, America was playing super catch-up. Yeah, I don't... Scrubbed. Scrub-a-dub-dub. Scrub-a-dub-dub. Seriously? Seriously? Okay, fine. Let me... Oh, and they've ended it. So, they've ended it so we don't get to see the absolute colossal explosion if anything goes even slightly remotely wrong with this rocket at the moment. Anyway, okay. Yeah, it's been blue balls. And that little spinning disc above my head there, that little spinning disc, that's because there is a giant crater in Texas at the moment. Yeah. On the bright side, thank you so much. I can go to bed early and actually get some sleep before I get my filling. I've lost a filling, and so I've been chewing on the wrong side of my mouth for a significant period of time. Anyway, the 4-inch flight. Let me tell you about the 4-inch flight. So when you look at it, you just have a rocket on the pad, and it lights up the engines, and then the engines immediately shut off, and the parachute sort of shoots out the top of the rocket, and that's it. And it turns out that it did actually take off, but there was some barometric pressure sensor tripped that said, you're already at the right altitude, cut off the main engines. And so it did that. So it took off an amazing 4 inches and then landed back on the pad. But now they had the most... and then, of course, after they cut off the main engines, the capsule said, am I below the right altitude to eject the parachute? And of course it was, because it was still at sea level. So it ejects its parachute. And you're looking at this and it's like, huh? And then they had this problem, that they had a fully fueled rocket and no way to get the fuel out of the rocket. Now, admittedly, it was a relatively small intercontinental ballistic missile that had been barely modified to carry a Mercury capsule. But they considered all sorts of things, which actually included just shooting holes into the rocket to hopefully drain out the fuel. Anyway, yeah, so I strongly recommend going and looking at the 4-inch flight. It's a early Redstone mission. Yeah, one of the ones that, so many of the early missions are just sort of joyously guilty pleasure fails. But the 4-inch flight is one of those ones where it doesn't blow up, but in many ways that causes, yeah, if it blows up, your problems are over, right? All the fuel's exploded. All it's clean up in aisle 3 after that. With the Redstone, it didn't blow up. They had all the fuel sat there on board this thing. Yeah. Stickman, I love you too. Yeah, apogee 4 inches, 10 centimeters. Yeah, Comface, damn straight. Okay, so on that joyously interesting moment, I guess, yeah, SpaceX failed to take a banana to orbit for the 10th straight attempt. Let me come very briefly back to... yeah, I kind of shrink the SpaceX launch window because that's useless now. You're not going to Mars. That's, this great canyon. Yeah. Thank you, Joshua, for, Musk, the DEI hire from South Africa. Anyway, what I wanted to show you was... and still do. This works out great because now the next time I do this, I won't have the pressure of getting a filling done tomorrow. Where are we? I want my Excel spreadsheet. Yeah. I'm just going to briefly go over this once and then I'm going to bed. Right, so this is what I wanted to go over. This is the profile for... No, that one. Move. There we go. Okay. So up is... this is the energy of the booster. This is tons of TNT. This is give or take a megaton. The energy of the booster is never more than, I think it's 20 tons of TNT equivalent, something like that. So the booster is basically operationally insignificant. So this thing, and most of that energy it loses to the atmosphere. And then, this is the energy of the Starship that's got virtually all of the energy. This is losing the energy. It's basically a straight line. Virtually all of that energy is kinetic energy. Virtually none of it is potential energy. That's the one in green. And the landing burn is nothing. It really is. There's a reason why the shuttle, if you take a look at it, is very similar in form factor to Starship. So basically, you had a choice. You could either put an undercarriage on this, or you could, rather than having a few tons of undercarriage, you can do this thing where you have a few tons of extra fuel, but now you're entirely, it's basically the reliability of an undercarriage and a runway versus the reliability of relighting turbopump engines. And that's all the way over here, So you start off with, give or take, a megaton of TNT energy. By the time you're actually doing the landing burn, there's basically nothing left. And this one's actually, this is altitude, and so falling objects would accelerate. This is not accelerating because of air resistance. So I'll plot up atmospheric pressure on that one. Anyway, right, so I had all sorts of things planned for this stream. I will Thunderfoot Prez, make nuclear great again. I agree completely. Of things that will save mankind, nuclear energy is definitely one that you want to go for. So France has a litany of sins to its name, but on the plus side is great cheese, great wine, decent climate, they have a pants load of nuclear. So it's, I think, 80% of France's electrical energy is generated by nuclear. And if we'd all done that, it would have been fantastic. Anyway, so, people are fleeing the stream because nothing interesting is going to happen. So, I say, please do a video on how to pronounce nuclear. Nuclear. Yeah, you got to put the extra U in there. It's so much better if you say nuclear. Nuclear. Clear. It's got the word clear in it. Anyway, okay. Many thanks to everyone who has turned up. Many thanks to all those who have supported the channel over the years. And I will see you when I have my fillings repaired. So, yeah. Thank you once again, and have an awesome day or awesome night, depending on